What are you drinking this morning?
Hey, it's funny. It's funny you ask. It's the same thing that I had.
Any last
Same
week?
thing from the previous week. Actually, no. It's a little bit different. It's still ironclad, but it's the oh goodness. I gotta look at the back for the roast. It's a different roast this time, but it's really good. I really like it.
Right on. Yeah, I got Blanchard's again, but I had a little scare. I almost totally ran out of all coffee in the house
Mmm.
between my last bag and when the new ones came. So we got lucky this morning. We're rocking a new bag,
That's good.
but it's still blank. Yeah,
That's good. So it's like this is like Team Ironclad versus Blanchard's right here, right now. I don't know.
I know. Eventually, we're gonna have to make a switch here and have the other one sample the other bag.
True. Or I'm thinking, I don't know. We have to bring him on the podcast for a showdown.
I like that. I like that. All right. So last week we talked about how to like implement some healthy ways to deal with COVID-19 and quarantine and all that. But we talked mostly about giving yourself grace and understanding where you're at and kind of feeling your feelings and moving forward from there. We had some great responses to that. Did you hear anybody reach out to you personally about that podcast?
Yeah, man. I mean, other than from like the comments and stuff like that, I mean, we saw like I think she CC'd you as well in that email, but like Dana as well.
Oh yeah.
Taking a listen to
Yeah,
the
that's great.
podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, a few people. But it sounds like you might have had some personal responses.
Yeah. Well, besides Dana, another client reached out and just said it was great to hear that people are responding in all different kinds of ways, and thought it was super important that we brought up grace and not just like the no excuses mentality of get back on track. What are you doing? Kind of thing. Like this
This podcast.
totally. What's that?
That's for this podcast.
That's right. This is the one. Oh man. So let's segue with that. So we're going to talk today about ways to make progress at home. So depending on where you're at, you probably did have to take some time, or you probably are still taking time to kind of sort out what this new life feels like for you. But if you are in a position to get back on track and start moving things forward again, what does progress look like from here? And so we're going to hit it from a mindset or mental standpoint, and then we're going to hit it from more of a physical standpoint, and then we might get into the nutrition of it at the end of it. But
Yeah.
let's start with the mental side.
Go ahead.
And then let's say, Demetrius, after you've given yourself a little bit of grace and kind of owned where you're at, what's the next step for kind of implementing that routine again, or getting back on track?
Man, after giving yourself grace, after going through, really feeling out your feelings, the grace process doesn't stop. I'll say that first off, foremost. Like, it's still going to be there, but now to get moving and get going forward, we kind of brought it up a little bit in the last podcast there, is like, setting up some different habits in place, like getting a schedule together. Get back, because usually the disruption that we had was because we had a schedule before that was totally thrown off whack. So, okay, first, probably get a schedule together, get something in place, get a plan together. And then also to move, again, I think some more help from moving from the grace there is like, I guess, like finding some like acceptance in like where you're at. I think that's gonna help like kind of get you into making a schedule and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important what you said about kind of where you're at. So again, meet yourself where you're at. Coaches, meet you where you're at. If you have to really have an honest look at what you're ready for and what your goals should be. And so for some people right now, the initial goal of like losing fat or getting really, really strong or whatever, that might not be an appropriate goal for the time, and you might have to adjust the goal. And then secondly, meeting yourself where you're at is also going to take into account how much time has passed between your routine, your steady routine, and when you're ready to start going again, right? And so for some people, it was 2 weeks of doing absolutely nothing, with no steps, with no real like activity, no purposeful movement throughout the day, and know maybe even sleep maybe suffered, nutrition probably suffered as well. So people need to kind of realize you're not just going to jump back into what you were doing a month ago, even if you're in a situation where you have access to equipment, which you probably don't. You're not just going to jump back in with some of the same stuff. So you kind of need to temper back and go back to what we talked about in the first podcast, is set some basic milestones that you can hit pretty easily for some success, and then build from there. So not trying to do too much when you first get back into things would be one thing that I would add to kind of the where you're at side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and another thing people need to realize too is that kind of when you're ready side of it, of when you've given yourself grace, and when you're starting to feel things moving in a positive direction again, it's not feeling so hectic. That's when you kind of say, I'm ready to do this, and that's when you kind of need to realize, are you or are you not ready, and then to start the process, not just to force it back in when you're not ready.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, it's probably like a fine line there too, because you really sometimes it's not that you're not ready, but again, we brought that up too in that previous podcast. I mean, talking about like allowing yourself to kind of just sink into it, like you were saying how you were having trouble like getting out of bed, or you're staying in bed late or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You might have to give yourself a little push sometimes. You might not just fall into like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go today, like this is the day, I'm motivated again. You might have to give yourself a little nudge to kind of get past that area of where you're like, oh, I'm just gonna keep coasting by until this passes. It's like, no, you might need to start doing something now. You might need to start moving a little, get back to that activity.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. So it's probably been a couple, I know for you maybe even more, but like a couple weeks at least of getting back to some semblance of a routine for your own fitness. Has that been a key component to you adjusting to this new life in the last couple weeks or so, or has it been a real struggle for you?
I would say the fitness component has been probably a little bit easier for me than most, just because of also my position, what I do, being a trainer with Redefine here. I'm doing virtual classes every morning, so the workout piece has kind of been there for me since we started virtual training, which is awesome. And I've just applied that. But for my current routine, what I've been doing, because I'm honestly not used to being sedentary for such long periods of time, because I'm at the gym, I'm standing around, I'm coaching clients, moving. So what I find myself doing in between work that I'm doing for the gym now while I'm on the computer is I'm like in between, like I'll set timers for myself to get up and do something active, whether that's like 20 push-ups, 20 squats, whatever. I'll just pick a couple exercises and I'll knock out a set, then I'll get back into work. Mm-hmm. So like my days are kind of filled up with that. Like that's almost like my new plan there. It's like I'm having these mini workouts throughout the day there till the end of the day.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. I've kind of created to make my routine feel a little bit more habitual and steady. I've started to just kind of broadly program what I'm doing. And so for some days it's like kettlebell, because I do have a kettlebell at my house, which is great. I do some days of kettlebell, usually 3 days a week. And then the other days I do either yoga or running / walking. So I just kind of do one of those every single day. It's starting to fall into a rhythm and a program, which is kind of nice. So for me, that was key. And I definitely wasn't ready for that like 2 or 3 weeks ago to jump right into something that was maybe every day, or even like mildly intense or high intensity. But now that I am ready for it, and I gave myself that little push that you talked about, get back to it, I've started to notice that that's really, really like helping me structure and make my days just feel better and be more productive for whatever I'm working on personally, which has been great.
For sure, definitely.
Yeah. The last thing I kind of wanted to bring up about the mental side of it is this also relies heavily on when you're ready, but that was a huge disruption in lifestyle, and something that we talk about at Redefine a lot is lifestyle and making health and fitness a part of your lifestyle. And so, nothing changes once you're ready. Nothing changes as far as making fitness a part of your lifestyle. You can still make progress, which we'll talk about more physically in the next couple minutes here, but still getting it back to something that you are engaging in, at least, more so than not in the course of a week. So that might look like 4 days out of 7 or whatever it is for you, but definitely making it part of your identity and part of your lifestyle so that you're not just letting it slip and slide past.
Yeah, definitely. I think the identity piece is huge. Like creating this habit, once you get to this space here, I think it's an awesome time to even kind of, experiment a little. Kind of like I am. Like with these mini workouts that I'm having, this is something I wasn't doing prior. I did have more of a structured program, this block of time, this many times a day, many times a week. But being that things have kind of changed a bit, I kind of changed my schedule a bit, and I'm trying something different. Maybe this is time for you to try something different. Maybe it doesn't have to be the 3 times a week, hour-long workouts. Maybe it's, like you said, 4 or 5 times, but shorter workouts.
Mm-hmm.
Putting them in between breaks, in between, like I'm saying, like in between my work here, where if you find yourself that you're sitting for 8 hours straight, whatever it is that you're doing, put it in between that. Add it in between your work break. Give yourself a little break from work to exercise, or put it at the beginning. Try it. This is a time to kind of experiment a little because, this is your time.
Mm-hmm.
So finding what works best for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Kind of just experimenting, being open to some new ideas. As trainers, we're in the gym, especially, we're very, very used to kind of, and maybe this was a fault of ours, as coaches in general, but got used to very specific methods of progression. When we're in the gym, we have access to all different types of equipment. We have our routines of what works really well in the gym, and we never really had to think outside of that because, hey, that stuff worked great and we were in the gym. But now it's not, and we've had to get creative and learn some new things, and we have. And so let's talk a little bit about the physical progressions you can make while at home, even if it's not just getting back to a routine, but it's actually maintaining or moving forward with the progress that you had made or want to make. So what kind of stuff have you started implementing in maybe your one-on-one training or your virtual group training to kind of add some more intensity or more progression into the workouts?
Yeah, man. That's been fun to do. Find different ways to challenge people and challenge the workouts and stuff like that. A few things that we did, kind of know from the gym, from being in the gym is, time. You can always manipulate time and how, the rest periods and stuff like that to increase the intensity of something. But of an actual exercise now that we don't have load to change and stuff like that, we've really been focusing on a lot of tempo type stuff there. So whether it's slowing down the motion or even doing an ISO hold for a bit and making sure keeping everything contracted during that period of time. So changing up the whole tempo of a movement has been really key to adding some extra to the exercises there.
Right.
A lot of for myself, a lot of combining movements back to back, where we might start in some particular plank and then transition to either another version of it or to something else, and really just stacking stuff. So stacking can be a form of progression for those exercises there. The way that you combine those stuff, because usually in the gym you wouldn't want to stack too many of the same stuff together, unless usually we wouldn't. For our clients there, it'd be, we're doing this movement and then this movement that's opposite, the opposing muscle or an opposite muscle group. But now it's hey, we don't have that same stimulus, so we need to give it a little bit more push. So we might do a push variation with another push variation with another push, just to get that intensity out of that movement.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I found myself starting with lots of workouts with a power move, something that's generating lots of explosiveness, and For people who don't necessarily know the nerdy side of fitness, that is pretty comparable with strength. And strength is something that you would train with like heavier load, with fewer repetitions. And so power, you can do something very similar, and it's pretty easy to do it with your body weight. So some examples of power movements could be jumps, anything explosive like an explosive push-up, or it could be sprinting. Those are three really good examples of power movements. And I typically am throwing a squat jump or a lunge jump into most programs right now, just to build some of that strength and that power. Um, so as far as adding certain things in, power is definitely probably number one for me. As Eric Cressey mentioned, you're not going to lose a ton of strength and a ton of muscle right out of the gates here. You're going to lose power pretty quickly. So getting power back on the table has been number one, especially without access to equipment. The second one I noticed was adding volume. So reps and sets, and I got to say clients have noticed this as well. They're very used to hitting a certain number of sets and reps in the gym. And then when suddenly you might be adding up into 4, 5, 6 sets of things, or you might be doing, instead of 8 to 10 reps or 5 to 6, whatever it was, now you're doing 15, 20, that sort of stuff. Or you might even be doing max repetitions or sets to failure at some time. But yeah, I also noticed the tension side of things as well. So again, these were things that we knew that we weren't necessarily manipulating a whole lot in the gym, just because we had gotten used to a certain way of doing it. But these are great tools that we know and have had to kind of, fall in love with. And so one of the ones that I've been using a lot is kind of those compound sets, as well as where you're doing one thing. So maybe some of my clients have dumbbells where we're doing maybe a chest fly, and then we do some push-ups or reverse of that depending on their level. And then we might go into like a tricep focused movement, just lots of things that add tension. So for me, the three main variables we're manipulating are power, which is kind of equivalent to strength at this point, volume, and then tension. Those are the three big ones that I found.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think with that, you can change those variables up so much, really. And I'm not a variance type of person. I like a certain structure, a certain set, and I'm good with that. But I do like manipulating the way that I am performing it, whether that be slowing it down or performing in a more explosive manner, or compound exercise, combining it with some other exercises and stuff like that is a really good way to, again, make sure that you're making that physical progress. And you can still do it at home. I mean, people have done it without weights. It's been done,
Oh yeah, this isn't a new concept.
Not at all.
Yeah.
When I really started working out, it was body weight. I couldn't pick up the dumbbells my stepfather had at the house first. I just started with push-ups and sit-ups. No squats, because obviously you don't do legs as a young boy. Or about your upper body there. Well, there's still grown men that think that way too, I think. But
yeah, some people don't grow up that way.
But yeah, so it's possible, So it's I think if you're not doing something, try something at home. If you're not already doing something, try it, and then look at these different ways to progress it. If you feel like something is not giving you the type of intensity that you want or need, slow the movement down, make the movement quicker, add more reps, combine it with another movement, switch it up a bit.
Yeah, I like it too. And just in terms of people looking at this from a positive side, there's lots of really good skills that you can take out of this from the client side of this. As trainers, we're ever engaging in our skill and trying to be better at this all the time. And this is definitely gonna, I'm really excited about how much better this is gonna make everybody as trainers, all coaches having to learn how to deliver in such a different way. But as clients, you can, what you were kind of talking about is this, you get up and you do maybe a set of something every hour or whatever it is. And that's this, that's very aligned with this principle of greasing the groove. And I don't know if you've probably seen that yet from Pavel. He was big on that.
For sure.
But it's this idea that, you limit the difficulty of the movement, but you do it really frequently. So he would do this with pull-ups or even push-ups. And so if you take a movement that's pretty difficult for you, but you can do well, maybe once or a few times, you would do a grease the groove where you would do it maybe every hour on the hour, a couple times a day, maybe like 5 to 8 to 10 times a day. And you would just perform that movement and you would watch yourself just get better at that movement. And the reason it's doing that is because it's very much a skill. Like a lot of strength is just skill. So learning, like your body learning how to move through that plane of movement or doing that exact like movement is big. And so greasing the groove just helps you get better at it without adding like a crazy amount of difficulty to it, like doing like you would in a set or back-to-back sets or in the scheme of a workout. It's just letting you focus and isolate that one movement. So for people maybe who aren't so great at pull-ups or push-ups or lunges or planks or anything like that, like limit the difficulty and do it really frequently throughout the day, and you might come out of this, up in your push-ups by 10, or maybe you could only do one and now you can do a set of 10 or 15 or whatever it is. So those are really, really nice things that come out of here with some new like physical skills.
So what we're telling all clients is you should be able to do a push-up once quarantine is done. Once you're back in the gym, it's a push-up challenge. We're all doing push-ups.
Yeah,
and lunges. We've done, I don't know how many lunges, obviously like you said, the jump squats and jump, like lunges have been in almost all the programming. So our clients are going to be like lunge masters.
Yeah, like weight's not going to be a thing for these people.
Like the endurance, the endurance in lunges is just going to be, it's going to be through the roof.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Okay, so we hit the mental side. We hit a little bit of the physical side. Anything else we want to address today? Maybe more physical stuff or nutrition?
Yeah, I don't know. You mentioned nutrition a bit. Is there something that you want to go through there? Like how have you been? I know we talked about a little bit in the last podcast, but yeah, what is something that you've been really doing more so? You said you've been cooking. Anything to add to that?
Well, personally, I'm not really focused on nutrition at the moment. I am just eating healthfully, and like I think I mentioned that 90-10 rule for me, and if I hit 90% nutritious, I'm really happy, and I have been doing that. And for me, that was never an issue when I cook at home. I don't really bring snacks or junk food into the house for me. So I'm eating lots of good food, and that's been great. I would say that if people typically react in two ways when they're stressed, and there's typically people who stop eating or start under eating, and there's people who overeat or kind of binge a little bit to kind of deal with these feelings. And maybe the first step in that, and you can probably talk to this a little bit more than I can, but the first step in that is probably being aware of what's happening and trying to set up some sort of framework that's going to allow you success. And so talking with a few people, they've just noticed that with the quarantine, with the change, being at home all the time, some people alone, some people not, but they've noticed big changes in their eating habits. And then, I guess my question to you would be, at what point do you give yourself that little push to say, okay, I've had my time with like giving myself grace and understanding where I'm at. How do I then proceed to kind of set some parameters for my eating or get that sort of back on track so I'm happy with where I'm at?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing first is to you got to remember, you got to make you got to know like what your outcome is. Like you got to know why. You got to have like this overarching idea of things. Like if you're just going day by day thinking about like quarantine and the hectic stuff that's going on, you're going to be more likely to fall into the not eating enough or to binging more. You want to like meet yourself where you are, but then understand like, okay, like I do have this goal. What little change can I make? You said this about like the exercises, like picking something simple, doing that. What little change can you make? If you notice that you, whether you're actually binging or not, let's add some nutrition parameters. So this, like you said, set up some parameters. So maybe it's add a cup of veggies with each meal. So making sure that you're getting a full cup of veggies with each meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whatever, how many meals you eat within the day, but going that route. avoiding, like you do, having the sweets in the house. Don't purchase those things. Go make sure that you're not purchasing that stuff so you don't have it in home to eat or binge with. Find some alternatives until you can try to get yourself away from that. Pick some healthier snacks that you like. Enjoy some fruit. Like a veggie platter, something like that. Find something else to if you have that inclination to like go and want to snack on something, there's only the healthier items to snack on. But yeah, I think like you really got to just like position like your reasoning. Like if your reason is like, hey, I don't want to come out of this feeling worse than when I came into it, then you need to make some changes. If you really want to feel, if you don't want to feel that way, if you want to feel better, like we can feel better coming out of this too. Or if you want to maintain where you're at, okay, understand that, and then set parameters in that place to make sure you come out of, in that way, in that manner.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think people might need to take a step back and try to think, okay, maybe it's been a little crazy and hectic with my food, but maybe I can now get to a point where this is like get to that maintenance calories, and this is where we'll maintain for a little bit, and then maybe we can talk about a calorie deficit in the future, or maybe you're ready for it now and you can get right back to it, and you're just totally ready for that. But if you're not and you still kind of need that comfort, and that's okay, then work with it and then try to put it within that parameters if you're really serious about getting back to that goal. But I'd always remind people too that this is, again, like a long-term game. This is a lifestyle as well. And so these couple months of being in a pandemic, like this is a real serious thing, isn't going to put you off track for years. Like this is, so far this has been a month. This could be 2 or 3, who knows how many more months this could be. But like the amount of backtrack or loss you might have had in this, 1 month to 4 month period, whatever, isn't gonna be forever. That's a 4 month on a 10-year scale. And like I said in the first podcast, people do have a hard time looking at that, like with that wide lens of time, of like, this is a 10-year process, not a 3-month process. And that's really easy to do as a person. It's easy to look very short term and be like, why am I not this? Why am I not blah? But like, if you put that out 10 years and you say, well, it's 4 months, that's not that much. Like that's really hardly anything. So if you can kind of just start to get it back a little bit to where it was, you can focus on big progress later. But right now, do what's right for your body and just get back to normal, or get back to kind of what you were, and then start moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, you put it the best way, and it seems to be what's working best for the clients as well. Speaking to a few people who have kind of felt like they've gone off track, but just went back to that normal, that normal eating, setting that pattern there, whether it was what they were doing beforehand in a deficit, or going to like a maintenance level and just focusing on that and just getting more whole, nutritious foods, so yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Anything else?
That's all, man. Do you got anything you want to leave anybody with?
Well, I just want to thank everybody who's listened so far, and if you do have any feedback or anything, we really appreciate a review or some response in some way from the podcast. And then if you guys have any kind of upcoming topics you want to hear, please let us know in some way. You can always reach us on social, or you can go through our website and submit a form. But yeah, just let us know. We look forward to hearing from all you guys.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, D.
Catch you later.
Later, man.
Peace.